Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and call the meeting, Assembly Ways and Means and Senate Finance Joint Committee for today to order. If I could please have the committee secretary call the roll.
Senator Brooks,
Here.
Senator Cannizzaro, Senator Dennis,
Here.
Senator Dondero Loop,
Here.
Senator Gokachia,
Here.
Senator Hammond,
Here.
Senator Kiefer,
Here.
Senator Ratty, Senator Severs-Gansert,
Here.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson,
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen,
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi,
Here.
Assemblyman Levitt,
Here.
Assemblywoman Miller,
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno,
Here.
Assemblywoman Peters,
Here.
Assemblyman Roberts,
Here.
Assemblywoman Titus,
I am here.
Assemblywoman Tolles,
Here.
Assemblyman Watts,
Here.
and Chair Carlton.
And I am here. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Please remember to mute all of your devices, all the standard disclosures. Everyone knows that we are meeting virtually and that they needed to register ahead of time. We have 2 budget hearings today for the Secretary of State and the Public Employees Retirement System. With that, I believe we have the Secretary of State up first. Madam Secretary, if you're out there, if you would like to go, or whoever's representing would like to go ahead and be queued up. And also committee members and for the public, the committee will be meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday. We just have 1 budget and there's a lot of work to get done Monday morning. So the committee will be meeting at 9 a.m. So you will see the agendas change today. So 9 o'clock, here we go. So with that, Madam Secretary, are you there?
I am, and thank you so much, Chair Carlton. It's our pleasure to be here today. Chairman Brooks and members of the Joint Committee, for the record, I'm Nevada Secretary of State Barbara Sagaski. Joining me from Carson City is Scott Anderson. He's my Chief Deputy of Secretary of State. And also present with us are the Deputy Secretary for Commercial Recordings, Kim Parande, Deputy Secretary for Elections, Mark Balashin, Deputy Secretary for Southern Nevada, Gail Anderson, and Deputy Secretary for Securities, Aaron Houston. Tim Horgan is our Chief IT Manager, and Sherry Hutter is our Administrative Services Officer 3. And we are here this morning before the Joint Committee to present to you our proposed budget for the 2022-23 biennium. To provide the committee with context for our budget request, we will begin by presenting an overview of the structure and functions of our office, as well as the revenue we collect. The Office of Secretary of State is one of the original constitutional offices established in Nevada Constitution. It is responsible for maintaining the official records of the acts of the legislature and the executive branch. Additional duties have been added over time and include Chief Officer of Elections, Recorder of Business Entity Filings, Register for Notaries Public, and Administrator of the Uniform Securities Act, the Silver Flume Business Portal, and Document Preparation Services, Nevada Lockbox, Domestic Partnership Programs as well. The Secretary of State serves on the various boards and commissions listed here, and I won't read them, but there they are. My favorite one is TRPA, and that is the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. With that, the Office of the Secretary of State is organized into 8 main divisions. A lot of people don't know that. They think we're only elections. The Commercial Recordings Division, the Business Portal Division, the Domestic Partnership, Nevada Lockbox, Document Preparation Services Division, the Executive Administrative Division, the Elections Division, the Notary Division, the Operations Division, and the Securities Division. Our main offices are located in Carson City in the Capitol Building, the Myers Annex, and the Blaisdell Building. We also have an office in City Hall in North Las Vegas. Normally, in-person customer service, such as picking up forms or paying fees, are available in both the Carson City and Las Vegas offices. However, our office have been closed to the in-person counter services since the beginning of the declaration of emergency. Fortunately, online and mail services have continued since that time, and we have been able to serve our customers. I will now turn the time over to Mark Voloshin to continue the presentation. Mark?
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and good morning, Chair Carlton, Chair Brooks, and members of the Joint Committee. For the record, I am Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections. The Office of the Secretary of State currently has 141 full-time positions authorized. The number of positions assigned to each division can be seen on this slide. Of these 141 positions, 23 are currently unfilled due to the hiring freeze resulting from the budget crisis. I would be remiss if I did not address the fiscal impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the agency that began last year and will continue at least through the next biennium. An awareness of how we adapted to these challenges in 2020 will help ensure an informed discussion regarding our requirements going into the next biennium. First, the Office of the Secretary of State did not interrupt services due to the pandemic. This meant that our customers continued to receive support and that our revenue stream remained open, though reduced. Despite this continuation of services, the agency was able to return a full 19% of our FY21 budget to the general fund, which included leaving 23 of our 141 positions unfilled and frozen. This substantial reduction in our personnel was necessary to meet the governor's request. The pandemic has also emphasized how closely we must compete with other states for corporation services. We have watched closely as other states have adjusted their rates and fees in an effort to attract business filings. This effort will likely continue for some time as every state looks for ways to increase their revenue. The Office of the Secretary of State serves as the collector for various fees, fines, and penalties. These range from filing and license fees with the Commercial Recordings Division, to broker-dealer license fees with the Securities Division, to candidate filing fees with the Elections Division, to fees related to the document preparation services and domestic partnership programs. The majority of the revenue collected by the Office of the Secretary of State goes to support the general fund. In fiscal year 2020, the office collected revenue of $209.7 million. Of that total, $209.2 million, or 99.8%, went to the general fund. This places the Office of the Secretary of State as the third highest general fund revenue generating agency in the state. Slide 8 shows the total general fund revenue collected by the Office of the Secretary of State over the last 12 fiscal years. As the chart shows, the total amount of general fund revenue collected each year by the Secretary of State's office continues to increase until fiscal year 2020. Since the administration of state business license program was added to our office in fiscal year 2010, total general fund revenue collected by the office has grown steadily at an average of 3% per fiscal year. Starting in April and May 2020, a combination of businesses renewing at a lesser rate and the moratorium on late fees also contributed to a reduction in revenue. In fiscal year 2020, we experienced the first decline in 12 years due to decreased filings and renewals in April to June due to the COVID-19 pandemic and state of emergency. This resulted in a $10.5 million reduction in general fund revenue. With that said, the office still generated over $209 million in FY 2020 due to the continuation of online and mail-in services. This slide shows the breakdown by division of the general fund revenue collected by the office for fiscal year 2020. As you can see, the Commercial Recordings Division is by far the largest general fund revenue generator in the office at 83.9%. Next is the Securities Division at 14.4%. Together, the Commercial Recordings Division and the Securities Division made up 98.3% of the total general fund revenue collected by our office in fiscal year 2020. The remaining 2% came from Uniform Commercial Code or UCC fees, the Notary Division, and the Elections Division. The next slide compares general fund revenue collections by the office over the last 12 years in blue to the legislatively approved general fund appropriation amount for the office over the same time period in orange. The general fund revenue collected by the office plays a crucial role in the state's total general fund budget. This slide on revenue collection shows this last slide on revenue collection shows the growth in general fund revenue collected by the office per approved full-time equivalent or FTE position until fiscal year 2020, when we experienced the decline due to COVID-19 late in the year. With a high number of positions held vacant due to the pandemic-related budget cuts, actual revenue per filled positions would be significantly higher than if based on approved positions. Our dedicated staff, robust work-from-home protocols, and expanded online offerings allow the office to continue to contribute as a major general fund revenue generator. The Office of the Secretary of State currently has two primary executive budget accounts, Budget Account 1050 and 1051. Budget Account 1050 contains the general operating budget of the office and is primarily funded by the general fund. Other minor funding sources for this budget account include domestic partnership registration fees, security fines and penalties, and other miscellaneous program fees. The second major budget account is Budget Account 1051. This account was established in response to the Help America Vote Act, or HAVA, to receive funds appropriated from the federal government in order to implement and maintain compliance with HAVA requirements. Nevada was awarded approximately $9 million from the HAVA grant in fiscal year 2019 and 2020 for the purpose of enhancing election security. In the 2020 HAVA Election Security Grants Award Packet, the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission, the EAC, dispensed grant funds with the stipulation that funds must be expended on election security-related enhancements. These funds have no expiration date. The table on this slide shows the Office of the Secretary of State's General Fund Budget Account 1050 request for the 22 to 23 biennium. This table breaks down our base budget, maintenance offsets, which mostly include the removal of one-time or non-reoccurring expenditures from our budget, our requested budget enhancements, and other statewide enhancement units. In total, the officer is requesting general fund enhancement appropriations of $17,858,779 in FY22 and $20,683,417 in FY23 for a total biennium enhancement request of $38,542,196. For the purposes of this presentation, we have divided our budget requests for Budget Account 1050 into major and minor enhancement requests. Up first, we have what we consider to be the major requests. Replacement Unit E710. This decision unit is a one-shot appropriation to request $2,530,292 over the biennium to fund the 5-year replacement for all servers, storage devices, and the networking devices that interconnect these services and storage devices. These devices and components are on a 5-year life cycle and replacement schedule in accordance with the Enterprise Information Technology Division's recommended schedule. This is for the replacement of the complete SOS infrastructure, which will be out of warranty and cannot be extended any further. Maximum warranty extensions were made due to requested budget cuts for FY21, and normal scheduled hardware replacement for the agency was shifted to accommodate cuts in FY23. If approved, we will replace 38 property tagged items that are overdue for replacement, both at the primary site, which is the EATS facility in Carson City, and the disaster recovery site located at the Switch facility in Reno. The hardware and software at both sites must be compatible in order to provide disaster recovery services. E225. This decision unit requests $1,214,832 over the biennium to fund enhancement hours needed to support our new commercial recordings processing system that went live on July 19th of 2019. E226, maintenance and support for civics or PCC. This decision unit requests $397,657 over the biennium to fund ongoing maintenance and support for our new system that went live on July 19th of 2019. Please note that the new civic system supports more than $175 million in general fund revenue annually. Slide 16 lists our minor enhancement units. The first three enhancements are being requested due to COVID-19. The sudden and rapid increase in COVID-19 cases began in March 2020, but cases have been growing across the United States as early as January of 2020. As the risk of community infection increased and the looming fiscal impacts became more apparent, Secretary of State Sagaski directed a moratorium on all agency travel, in-person meetings, conferences, and events. This resulted in a number of important budgeted items not being expended in the base year. The need for these events and related travel remains valid and will require funding in FY22 and FY23 in order to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the services offered by the Office of the Secretary of State. Starting at the top, E229. This decision unit requests $150 per fiscal year for events which were canceled due to COVID-19. E231. This decision unit requests $21,751 per fiscal year to fund elections workshop events that were previously canceled due to COVID-19. E233. This decision unit requests $23,392 per fiscal year to fund staff travel for conferences and training events that were canceled in FY20 and 21. E228. This decision unit requests $3,000 per fiscal year. This request funds a LexisNexis subscription for the Securities Division. E230. This decision unit requests $20,059 in FY22 to fund the extension of the warranties for our switch facility servers. These servers were scheduled to be replaced in FY20, but were later cut from the budget to offset the state's budget shortfall due to COVID-19. E232. This decision unit requests $20,000 per fiscal year. This request funds 2 expert witnesses for 2 cases per calendar year. This is a routine, previously unbudgeted requirement that directly supports case fulfillment. Expert witnesses are often requested by the prosecuting attorney in complex criminal cases. This cost has been previously split between our office and the Office of the Attorney General. E234. This decision unit requests $5,842 per fiscal year. The North American Securities Administrator Association Training Conference is a 3-day-long training opportunity that has speakers from other NASA jurisdictions, the FBI, and numerous law enforcement entities. 5 of our 7 criminal investigators are new to Securities and will benefit greatly from the shared expertise and training of the NASA community. E235. This decision unit requests $3,600 per fiscal year. A common recommendation of the Department of Homeland Security assessment teams, as well as the advice from numerous agencies, seminars, security classes, and industry best practices, is that we keep our software and application patching as current as possible to enhance the hardened nature of our systems. This PDQ product has shown to be of value to us in performing these necessary patching tasks, which sustain our cybersecurity posture. E236. This decision unit requests $3,701 per fiscal year. The Securities and Exchange Commission Joint Enforcement Conference is a 1-day-long training opportunity that has speakers from the SEC's Los Angeles and San Francisco regional offices, the FBI, the California Department of Business Oversight, with invitations extended to the Nevada Securities Divisions and our Arizona, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington counterparts. Again, 5 of our 7 criminal investigators are new to Securities and will benefit greatly from the shared expertise and training from the SEC and FBI. E239. This decision unit requests $4,018 per fiscal year to fund the annual maintenance costs for an appointment kiosk purchased during the COVID-19 pandemic. This kiosk reduces the risk to both employees and customers alike and enables enhanced social distancing. This will be an important part of our efforts to ensure the safety of our customers and staff alike as we hopefully begin to reopen to in-person visits in FY22. The table on this slide shows the Office of Secretary of State's HAVA budget according to 1051 requests for the FY22 to 23 biennium. which includes both state general funds depicted in the top half of the slide and federal grant funding shown in the bottom half.
If I could stop you here, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So how about if we go ahead and do 1050 and then we'll do 1051. That way we can divide up the questions and keep the issues clear. Is that okay?
Of course, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right. I know there are questions on 1050. So but before we get into in-depth on 1051, let's go ahead and take care of item 1050. So I know Ms. Howdigy had a couple of questions to start. So Ms. Howdigy.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I have just some questions on Decision Unit E225. So I know that in 2017, we approved $6.2 million for Sinuity, which you mentioned went live in 2019, so it's fairly new. And so my questions are just on Sinuity. Since it just went live in 2019 and we're asking for enhancements, did the vendor fulfill its contract deliverables completely for the project? And then if they did, then can you walk me through the enhancements that we need since it's such a new project? And will these be ongoing enhancements?
This is Barbara Sagaski, and I would like to address that and then turn it over to Kim Parandi, who is the head of that division, and we can go into it a little bit further. Thank you very much for the question, Assemblywoman Hudigi. And, we must improve how we do our projects and how we do the contracts. That's very important for us. And I'm going to let Kim Parandi talk a little bit about this, if you don't mind, because we've been working this since I've been in, and I know that it was requested before I came into office. So there are issues with vendors, but my main thing is looking at the contracts. But just so you all know that we, even though we've gone through some difficult times, this project, we are kind of in that tickle place where you have to stay and you have to keep the vendor because we've invested so much in where we are. But I'll let Kim Parandi, and then if Scott Anderson has any input, if Chair Carlton, if that's okay, I'll let those two respond. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kim Parandi, Deputy Secretary for Commercial Recordings. The original tire for this project was submitted and approved in 2015. The original request was $21.8 million. The approved amount for the tire was $12.1 million. And then we were allowed and approved in our budget $9.4. So the contract total amount was just over $9 million. And it was targeted to go live at the end of 2000 and let me get my dates right, 2018. The project was delayed and got pushed out about 6 months. We went live, pardon me, in July of 2019. And with any IT project of this magnitude, there are always going to be bugs that come with it when it goes live. There also will be some things that we recognize that we missed when we were building our requirements or that were misinterpreted when the vendor built it. So the enhancement list that you have as part of this decision unit represents the things that we need to improve in the system that were not part of the original contract. We did, and we continue to have some struggles with the system, but as the Secretary said, it is functioning. And thank goodness, because COVID-19 really set us back when we had to close our offices. So all of our services were available online and continue to be. And we work very, very hard to provide the best customer service we can when the system is experiencing any difficulties. We average about 1,500 transactions a day through Silverflume. The end of the month is a heavy time for us. So during those last 5 days of the month, every month, we average just over 3,000 transactions a day. Trying to think, and as Mr. Voloshin pointed out, this is the commercial recordings processing system, the highest revenue generating application that we have in the agency, just over 1 million transactions every year that we process through this, and over $175 million in revenue. So we are dependent on this now. We are 1.5 years into it, and it is functioning, but we still have a lot of work to do on it.
Madam Chair, can I follow up?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Howdigy.
Okay, because that answered like half of my question. So it sounds like you said these are improvements to the systems that were not part of the original contract. So these enhancements weren't part of the original contract, but was the original contract completely fulfilled by the vendor?
The Kim Parandi, Deputy Secretary for Commercial Recordings, the contract that was approved and we are still working on was not completely fulfilled. We are still working through some bugs that are covered under that contract. The enhancement items in this list are above and beyond that.
Okay, perfect. And then will they be ongoing enhancements?
Kim Parandi, for the record, these enhancements are ongoing. We're asking for the money to be used over the biennium because it's hard to time out exactly what we can do each biennium. And hopefully beyond this biennium, we won't have any further requests unless there's any updates to other applications that integrate with this.
And then just one last question, Madam Chair, on Silverflume. Thank you. And then so, will you just walk us through a little bit the benefits that these enhancements will provide?
Certainly. Kim Parandi, for the record. So we do have, and I believe the spreadsheet was submitted with the budget request, so I can share this with the committee if you don't have it. It is quite a large list, but I'll just kind of give you some ideas of the enhancements. It would include additional help for the customer in understanding the directions in each screen, what information they need to put in there. So it would include help screens like that. It would also cover items that we missed, that we just didn't have in the application, certain filing types or certain screens, certain signature lines, things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Ms. Howdigy. I have some other questions, so I'll go to, I have like 4 or 5 people in the queue, so please try to keep your questions brief if possible. Mr. Roberts, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On your permanent position removal, the 7 positions, what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on your ability to collect revenue since some of those positions are directly involved?
It's all right, Madam Chair. I'll have Mark Voloshin go into some detail on that. Thank you for the question.
Sure.
Thank you for the chair or the question. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. So 8 positions. I'd like to summarize and in general say that all of them are going to impact the agency in one way or the other. Unfortunately, beyond that, the positions are actually spread across our divisions. So out of the 8, excuse me, for example, 2 of them are in our commercial recordings division. 2 of them are IT related positions. One's in securities, one's in domestic partnerships, one's in elections, and one's in our operations division. In regards to the specific question, Assemblyman Roberts, which one of these or how are they going to affect revenue generation? The bottom line is the lack of all of them will certainly affect the agency, but it's not as easy as being able to say a removal of one position is going to be a reduction in state revenue by X dollars, unfortunately. The reality is with an agency that's only 141 positions, every position is vital. Every position supports every other position. So by having, for example, the 2 positions in commercial recordings, that's a significant amount more people that would be able to answer phones for the customers, be able to respond to emails, increase the timeliness of how we get back to them. The IT positions, a little bit more effective in responding to bugs that are identified, supporting the needs of the agency across the board and what those employees are doing. If there's only 1 IT person instead of 2, for example, again, that's less response time. That means people won't be able to work at their workstations as quickly, which again, ultimately affects the customers and the revenue generation as a whole. So while I know 8 positions may not sound like a lot to other agencies, perhaps, I will say that across the board for all 8 of those, there is a significant impact that the agency is going to experience, and more directly that our customers are going to experience. And with the situation as it is, as I previously mentioned, those sorts of issues, those sorts of irritants ultimately may drive some of our customers out of our state and into other places if they're going to do commercial filings or the like. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm just curious as to what the financial impact is on business and revenue collection. You kind of summed it up. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the time. And thank you for the answer.
You're welcome, Mr. Roberts. So with that, Ms. Senator Dondero-Loop, did you have a question, or have your questions been answered?
I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this information, Secretary, and all of you that have given to us. I think that you have gone over the one question I had about what's going to happen if we lose full-time staff. But would you please tell us about the benefits to this statewide election process by continuing these workshops? And I think you said this, but I'm not sure. Where were those workshops going to be held?
If I can, Madam Chair, I'd like to have Mark Balashin talk about that. He does, and the Elections Division does the training and again, we have them at different places where everyone can centrally locate. And I might add, though, that we want to recommend to the chair and to the committee members, if we can, that we'd rather have a freezing than the cuts to these positions, if that's possible. So with that, if I could have Mark Balashin answer the questions for Senator.
Perfect. Thank you for the question, Senator. Mark Balashin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The workshops, well, first I'll talk a little bit about them and the merit they provide to the state as a whole. I guess even more directly, I can answer your question about the location. They rotate typically between Reno or down in Las Vegas. Going forward, the current plan is potentially Reno, though I will let you know that we're looking very critically at which location ultimately would be the cheapest in the interest of saving the counties and the state money. So there are some options there, but generally back and forth between Reno and Las Vegas. In regards to the merit for these workshops, so we time them very deliberately after the session so that based on what changes come to Title 24 out of the legislative session, we're able to make sure that all of us collectively, the 17 clerks, their, in some cases, IT staff, are all on the same page about these legislative changes and understanding collectively how we're all on the same page and understanding what that's going to look like going into the next election cycle, which in some cases comes up faster than one might realize. These are also opportunities for us to invite guest speakers to come provide information to the clerks and the state elections division staff on such critical topics as election security. This previous workshop that was virtual had a pretty heavy emphasis, as you can imagine, on elections and cybersecurity, the sort of thing that translated very directly into actionable tasks for the county clerks and the elections division staff in preparation for the 2020 election cycle. So that's really the general gist, is to make sure, again, changes are identified, best practices are supported, concerns, questions are able to be raised in a community forum where all of the clerks and their staffs and the state are able to hear and understand and get on the same page at the same time. Does that answer your question, Senator?
Thank you very much. Yes. And one other question that I'm going to kind of combine together. We know that the office expended about $21,000 for the elections workshop when we had only approved just short of $5,000. And so could you talk about that a little bit? And then what do you anticipate for the 2022 election cycle that would justify continuing that higher annual workshop cost?
Certainly, Senator. Mark Balashin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. So first, in regards to the higher than anticipated costs during the previous elections workshop, to answer that one directly, As we approached the election cycle, it appeared as though there were going to be a significant number of issues and potentially some friction points that were best identified before the election cycle than afterwards. This resulted in an increased number of individuals attending. This resulted in a number of, again, guest speakers and extended the timeline of the workshop a little bit more so than had been anticipated when the original budget request was identified. Going forward into the 2022 cycle, I think it's safe to say that there's a number of things that we're going to continue to build upon in regards to some successes. We're going to be very critical in our discussions about what we can continue to improve upon, recognizing that everything has a potential to improve, and that, again, all of the state's voters deserve a continuously improving elections process. So looking at 2022, again, I'm not going to attempt to predict the future, but I do anticipate there's going to be increased needs for focus on cybersecurity, focus on infrastructure, discussions about voter education, to make sure that folks do understand both the state and federal changes that may come in the next 12 months, to make sure that as we get into that cycle, that perhaps there's a little bit less confusion by some of the voters, and hopefully a little bit more of an efficient and equally successful election. Does that answer your question, Senator?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you so much for preparing this information. And Secretary, it's a pleasure to see you.
Always nice to see you, Senator. Thank you.
So with that, I have Mr. Levitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a kind of more of a technical question. So the funding via interagency transfer, the increase is substantial from 19 to 20 versus 20 to 21. Where's that money being transferred from? Is that COVID money that's being transferred, interagency transfer, or is it coming from some other source?
Madam Chair, if we can turn this over to either Mark or Sherry, can go into detail on that. If that's all right with you, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Assemblyman Levitt, Mark Velocity, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The interagency transfer that you're referring to, do you mind providing a little bit more detail on which exactly you're looking at, just to make sure I'm answering the right question?
Sure. I just it looks like from what I have, the interagency transfer from 19 to 20 was $329,000, and from 20 to 21, it jumped to $3,145,000, which is a 850% increase. So I was just curious to where that funding is coming from.
Yes, sir, I understand. Unless if it's actually preferable, given the detailed nature of that question, if it's acceptable, I can get that information and get back to you in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Let's always remember that we have staff available also. So, Ms. Kaufman, could you answer the Assemblyman's question, or do we need to go ahead and do a follow-up on that?
Madam Chair, we'll have to do a follow-up on that. I'll have to check with Ms. Hoppy to determine what that interagency transfer is.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get that answer to everyone, and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you, Ms. So with that, I believe that one of the folks for questions is Senator Dennis. So Senator Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to this annuity system. I have a couple questions on that. One of the things is you had several hundred enhancements that what kind of enhancements are those? I mean, are those just back of the house type things, or are they user interface type enhancements?
Madam Chair, if it's okay, I would like to have my Deputy Kim Parandi respond to that. But I do know that for Senator Dennis's information, this is one of those things where we find a new bug or find something that we need to work on to get to where we want to go. And that's been a lot of what's been going on with the Sinuity contract. Ms. Ferrandi, if you could
You're
respond.
talking about eliminating the workarounds that you had to put in, right?
Correct.
So Kim Ferrandi, Deputy Secretary for Commercial Recordings. The enhancement list is a list that we built after we went live, noting both customer experiences that were not pleasant or internal staff things that were noticed that were either missed or need to be improved because the flow isn't that good, or perhaps we could make it a little bit more friendly for the customer. In addition to that, the system does integrate with about 5 other applications. So Sinuity itself connects to our Silver Flume portal, and then we have an accounting application, a credit card acceptance application, and various other things. So these enhancements cover all of those. Upgrades to those other applications, upgrades to the servers, as is one of the enhancement items here, or the requests in our budget. And so this list is a compilation of all of those things.
You kind of anticipated my next question, which was all of those different connections to the system. And you said you did upgrades to those. Well, what about, do you connect to other agencies within the state or outside the state for that matter?
Kim Ferrandi for the record. The Sinuity application does not, but our Silver Flume portal does. So Silver Flume portal itself connects with Sinuity as the back-end processing system for commercial recordings, but also integrates with other state agencies like Department of Taxation, some of the cities and counties, employment training and rehab, and so forth.
So all of these, so you just said that the enhancements included all these other external upgrading those so that they work with Sinuity. Is that right?
No, Sir. Kim Ferrandi, Deputy Secretary. The enhancement list is specific to Sinuity and its functionality with Silver Flume and the other applications that Sinuity needs to operate.
So is there going to need to be enhancements to all those other, I guess is my question.
Yes, but that's not included in this list here. Those upgrades and things are part of the IT budget.
Okay, so but those have to be upgraded in addition, right? So as you upgrade this software, you have to upgrade the functionality so that they can communicate?
Not necessarily. Those applications are functioning and working with the system right now, but they, like all other software, have a life. And so when those have to get upgraded, we may have to do that same thing with Sinuity, but we may not.
Okay, and then one of your maintenance costs were included in the original, at least the first 2 years, but now you're going to have ongoing costs for maintenance?
Correct. There's an annual maintenance and support fee that they charge as long as we're utilizing their system.
And what does that maintenance include?
That would include any repairs to what we call bugs, things that happen with the Sinuity application itself, and then access to their resources for assistance with those.
Okay, and then we have staff, in-house staff that works with them to make sure that all those things are implemented correctly?
That is correct.
Okay. And then also, are you anticipating that you're going to be completed on time with all the enhancements?
Well, we don't have a very good track record with that so far, but that is certainly our intent and our hope. So again, over the biennium, we have this large list. We are working diligently on getting all of the bugs that we have logged fixed and completed so that we can then move on to the enhancement items come July.
But you're anticipating to get those done within a 2-year period?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you, Senator Dennis. I always know that you'll dig into those parts of this that I really don't quite understand. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Senator Brooks, did you have any follow-up questions before we move on to the next budget?
Yeah, mine was more just a general question for the office and for Secretary Gasky about physical security and you know, I know that it's been kind of just been a wild time here in the United States and for state elections officers and county elections officers and if this isn't necessarily budget related, but how you feel the security's been adequate and if you know have any needs around physical security for you and your staff.
Thank you so much, Chair Brooks. We appreciate the question. And Madam Chair, if it's okay, I'll answer a little bit and then I'll turn it over to Mark Voloshin, our elections deputy. We have had an extraordinary great experience with all the law enforcement agencies, not only in our state of Nevada, but also nationally. We've been treated very well. They have kept us abreast of all issues, anything happening, anything going on. I cannot begin to tell you how many conference calls I've been on a weekly basis, daily basis sometimes, for this election and what's going on with other countries, what's happening. So we felt very good about what's going on. I know that you're talking about some of the threats that we had personally, and we do not have any security for that at all. We don't have, I think the governor's the only one that has that clearance. So Mark Voloshin and Scott Anderson have been talking about that, and it is something that was of grave concern, especially based on some of the events that have taken place over the last year. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair, that I have Mark Voloshin go into a little more detail on the security part of it. But again, I have to say that both statewide and federally, they have kept us abreast of everything that has been going on in our nation.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. Senator Brooks, I do appreciate the question. And like the Secretary said, I think it's important to state up front, first and foremost, that thankfully at no time did we ever feel as an agency or even as individuals that our security, our physical security was in need of more or found to be lacking. Between the federal and state agencies that we worked with, across the board, both North and South, it's been just an absolute tremendous outpouring of support. When in doubt, they were there and willing to help out and again, ensure the Secretary's safety as well as the staff's. Here in Carson City, Chief Litos and the Capitol Police have done an exceptional job. I think the most dangerous thing I've got to deal with out here is the occasional deer that wanders through the grounds. But that's a testament to their dedication and absolute perseverance over some pretty confusing at times, frustrating at others, and kind of worrisome times that we all experienced over the last 6 months. But again, in regards to the fiscal impacts of security, physical security, we had no need, or found ourselves needing anything additional outside of what Secretary Sagaski identified in the law enforcement agencies that we worked with. Again, keeping in mind, this is a law enforcement agency, right? We have law enforcement officers that work in both North and South for the Secretary. All of them and everybody else that we talked to and worked with were absolutely bending over backwards in their support to make sure that the Secretary and staff are safe. Thank you for the question, though.
And if I might add, Senator Brooks, that Metro in Las Vegas was fantastic because they would do drive-bys and come and call just to make sure of my particular safety. But we also want you to know that North Las Vegas Police and the building that we're in Las Vegas was very dedicated to us. The Capitol Police up in Carson City, as Mark Voloshin had told you, they just been outstanding and they have been looking out for our best interest. So we did feel very very good about the coverage. So thank you again for that question. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. Committee members, are there any other questions at this time on this particular budget before we move to the next budget? Not seeing any. If we could go ahead and proceed to Budget 1051, the HAVA, Help America Vote Act.
Madam Chair, one moment while I pull this up and I'll get this going. Thank you. The table on this slide shows the Office of the Secretary of State's HAVA budget account 1051 requests for the FY22 and 23 biennium, which includes both state general funds depicted in the top half of this slide and federal grant funding shown in the bottom half. Each table breaks down our base budget, maintenance offsets, which mostly include the removal of one-time or non-recurring expenditures from our budget, our requested budget enhancements, and other statewide enhancement units. In total, the office is requesting general fund appropriations of $760,003 in FY22 and $805,543 in FY23 for a total biennium request of $1,565,546. These funds will be used to develop a statewide centralized or top-down voter registration system. This decision unit, E237, requests $45,540 in FY23. Nevada is a member of the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, which is a multi-state consortium dedicated to improving the accuracy of each state's voter rolls and increasing access to voter registration for eligible citizens. Through ERIC, election officials in Nevada have been able to ensure the state's voter rolls are accurate and up to date, while simultaneously growing the voter rolls by encouraging eligible but unregistered citizens to register to vote. Pursuant to the ERIC membership agreement, the Secretary of State must, prior to each federal general election, send a postcard to at least 95% of the eligible or potentially eligible citizens who are not currently registered to vote. Failure to complete this requirement is grounds for dismissal from ERIC. The cost of printing and mailing the eligible but unregistered, or EBU, postcards cannot be covered by federal HAVA funds because activities related to voter registration drives are not allowable HAVA expenditures. Accordingly, the cost of the EBU postcards must be funded with general fund dollars. With that, I will return the remainder of my time to Secretary Sagaski.
Okay. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Chair Carlton and Chair Brooks and committee members. That concludes our presentation to the 2022-23 biennium budget request for the Office of the Secretary of State. And I'd like to thank the staff of the Office of the Secretary of State, the Governor's Finance Office, and LCB Fiscal for the efforts that went into creating this budget request. We look forward to any questions or comments from you or your members of the committee. And we just thank you very much for allowing us to be here today.
With that, excuse me, I believe I have Assemblywoman Tolles.
Yes, thank you so much. And first of all, thank you, Secretary of State, for all of your hard work during this last election cycle, to you and all your staff. We appreciate you very much. And I know that this particular budget utilizes the HAVA funds, and I heard in the presentation that there's a move to a top-down system. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm about that with the county clerks. Could you spend a little bit more time just talking about the benefit of that system and where we are, and do we have adequate HAVA funding to be able to move over? Just walk us through the process. Are we in process? When can we see that? And how will we be using the HAVA funds to cover that?
Thank you, Assemblywoman Tolles. We really appreciate that question. That's a great one. And I'm going to, if Chair will permit, I'll let Mark Voloshin go into that. So thank you very much again for the question.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Tolles. Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The two parts of your questions, ma'am, I'll answer them. First and foremost, the merits of the top-down voter registration system. First, something that you mentioned, and is absolutely echoed by all of the clerks across the state, as well as the Elections Division staff. This is going to be a very positive move for the state in regards to the maintenance specifically of the statewide voter registration list. The way it currently stands, for folks that maybe aren't aware of it, the system we have is a bottom-up, which means that the 17 counties maintain their own individual unique voter registration systems at their county level, and then they provide that information to the Office of the Secretary of State daily. What ends up happening, though, because of the nature of this system, is that if an individual moves from one county to another, for example, one county cancels their registration system and the next county starts a new one. So voter history is lost. There's a time period in between whereas that individual moves, where they may be unregistered, and it may take some time for them to get registered again, and then for us to double check and to do that voter list maintenance. So moving to a top-down system where the state maintains all of the records, and then the counties still continue to provide that information to do the maintenance, is going to be a huge step, especially in the speeding up of our list maintenance processes. Whereas before, again, it took some time. Now it will be almost instantaneous. Or if an individual does, for example, move from one county to another, again, that's a simple change for us at the state level without having to cancel or start a new registration. In regards to the funding, though, a little bit of background and description of how this is going to go moving forward. The first step, the most important one, I think, based on our experiences really across the state, is identifying these requirements. So what we're doing is we're in the process of an RFP that we're just about done with, and we'll process and put out there to get a vendor to come in and conduct an assessment of the entire state. This assessment is going to be critical because it's going to help us, help the secretary, especially, to make a decision in regards to what route to go. The options that we're looking at, a commercial off-the-shelf system that's already pre-built. There are a lot of vendors out there that have pre-built, ready to go voter registration systems and election management systems. There's the option to perhaps build it in-house. We have IT folks here in the agency who've been with the agency for decades, who are extremely skilled and extremely capable. There may be, again, a lot of benefit to us building it internally. Or maybe a blend where we take a commercial off-the-shelf system and maybe make it a hybrid using our IT team so that it meets our state-specific requirements. So this vendor is going to conduct the assessment across the state, look at the options and resources that are available, understand a little bit about where we're going as a state over the next couple of years, recognizing that even 2 years ago, what may have been fiscally possible then, it might not be as easy to attain now. So that assessment, once it's complete, will help give us a better understanding, so the secretary can make the decision going forward about what that looks like, and then we'll be able to begin that process. A very key part of this assessment is going to be defining what the fiscal limits look like, so that we have an understanding of what this could be. We've already conducted extensive discussion and collaboration with some of our elections counterparts in other states who've gone through this very process before. And the scope from costs has gone from a very little bit to an extreme large amount. So until we conduct this assessment, we really don't have a good understanding of exactly what the costs are. We do know that the HAVA funds are going to be able to, one, pay for the assessment, and two, will likely cover the majority of the costs based on what we're looking at right now. But beyond that, I'm not able to give an accurate answer if the HAVA funds that we currently have as a state are going to cover the entirety of that transition to the top-down registration system until after the assessment is done. Does that answer your question, Assemblywoman?
Yes, thank you. And so I don't know if I missed the timeline, but when do we think that assessment is going to be finished, where we'll be able to hear about whether or not the HAVA funds are enough currently, or if what would be the next step if we need to secure additional funding to bridge the gap from what HAVA may not be able to cover?
So that the timeline for the assessment, we're looking at between Mark Washington, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. The timeline is between 6 to about 18 months. Currently, a lot of it's going to depend on when the organizations that we look at from the vendors come back. They're going to, of course, provide a number of different options, and we'll look at that. The hope, though, is to have it within 12 months or less, so that we can understand where we're at in regards to the fiscal situation. If there are concerns, again, there's plenty of discussion from federal government currently underway about increasing election security and elections funds from the federal side of the House. So there's a number of different avenues that we have available to look at if it does turn out that the transition may not meet our requirements. Another option that we're keeping in mind is the potential to not have a massive one-day go-live type event where the entirety of the state transitions to this system at the same time, but instead to potentially do a piecemeal so that as we transition counties into the system, we're able to do so in a much less of a large fiscal requirement so that we can, again, stretch it out to make sure that from a fiscal point of view, we're able to do so in an efficient but timely manner.
Great. So what I hear you saying is that there's possible options to be able to get this in place by the next election cycle, or at a minimum, the next legislative cycle. We may be looking at some additional funding, or there may be federal grants available.
Potentially, yes, ma'am. I think for the end date, when all 17 counties and the state are transitioned, we are expecting sometime around hopefully before the 2024 election cycle for everyone to be completed. But that could be between 2024 and 2026 before all counties have transitioned successfully. But certainly the goal is to get moving in the right direction as soon as possible. Of course, not rushing it, doing it right, which is the highest priority.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to you and all the county election officials for all your work this cycle.
Thank you. And yes, I would be remiss, Madam Chair and someone told if I did not thank the clerks that we were able to work with and for the information that we've been able to get and garner and pass around as well. So thank you.
Okay. With that, Speaker Frierson, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Along the same lines, well, really two questions. First, is the estimate of 24 versus 26 and when it would be able to be implemented a reflection of uncertainty about the cost? In other words, would it be faster if it were able to be paid for? And then my second question is, and I do recall discussion about an estimate at some point of about $5 million, $9 million rather. Is that, or whatever the cost might be that we might get from an assessment, initial setup and IT costs, or is that part of ongoing costs that would continue beyond the biennium?
Madam Chair, if it's all right, I'll let Mark Voloshin respond to that as well. Thank you.
Speaker, thank you for the question. Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. First, in regards to the 24 versus 26 timeline, a lot of that is unknown. And Speaker, you're right. Part of that could be the costs. A big part of it also is the fact that the other states that we've talked to have repeatedly stressed, do not rush the requirement gathering. So this assessment that we're looking at in the near future is purely requirements gathering, understanding the environment we're in and making sure that the conditions are set in this environment to begin the project and to make sure that it has a 100% chance of success. That's of the utmost importance. So if it is not, again, to be very specific, a matter of if we had twice as much HAVA funds available to us right now, I still would be uncertain if that would get us to 2024 instead of 2026. As soon as the assessment is completed, though, the Secretary will have a much better understanding of the timeline and will be able to provide that information.
And the cost is whatever the cost ultimately is that initial one-time setup costs, or is that part of an ongoing operation with a top-down?
Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. In regards to the overall costs, still, again, a bit unknown at this point. The intent is to pay for a system that is not something tied to necessarily a vendor in perpetuity. That the goal is to have a date where we sever potentially vendor relationships, and it is something that our IT, our, again, exceptionally capable IT staff take over the management of in moving forward. Will there be a maintenance cost associated with it? Potentially, again, unknown currently as to what that could be, but the goal is to, if there are maintenance costs associated with it, to tie that more specifically into really our base budget, and that may mean that there are additional IT help desk support individuals required, for example. So as we're able to better identify those requirements and costs and how we can address them, instead of providing money to a vendor, we are going to look to address those in-house for a much more sustainable future.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I agree that your IT folks are outstanding, and I echo the support of the local election officials that Secretary of State mentioned. It's very important, so I appreciate all the work you all do.
Thank you, Assemblyman and Speaker Frierson. Thank you, Chair Carlton.
Are there any other questions from any other committee members at this time? I'm not hearing or seeing any. Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, it's nice to see you again. We're in our last 2 years together doing this. So
I know.
Time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
It does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Take care, and thank you for presenting today, and we'll move on from there. So
our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you
okay.
all, committee members and the chairs. We appreciate it.
Okay. All righty. So with that, we have our next budget item this morning, which is PEB. So, or excuse me, PERS, Public Employee Retirement System. So if we could go ahead and queue up the appropriate person. Ms. Lees, there you are.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Tina Liss. I'm the Executive Officer of the Public Employees Retirement System. Also in the room this morning, we have Lauren Larson, our Chief Financial Officer, who will present the budget after a few remarks from me. We also have for questions, Karina Fazer, our Operations Officer, and Steve Edmondson, our Investment Officer. And before the testimony on the proposed budget, I'm just going to take a moment to review the contribution rates for the next biennium that were based on the actuarial valuation performed by the board as of June 30, 2020. Now, these valuations determine the liabilities of the plan and the contribution rates needed to fund the system on an actuarial reserve basis. Several areas are analyzed during the course of the valuation, including plan design, member demographics, and economic assumptions. We did provide a handout to the committee, and I will take a moment and get that loaded on our screen so that we can share that with you. Thank you. The first chart, which is on page 2 of the handout, shows the demographics for each of the plans administered by the system. So you have PERS here broken into the regular and the police fire. You have the judicial retirement system, and you have the legislators retirement system. So as of June 30, 2020, PERS had 111,815 active members, with approximately 98,000 of those participating in the regular fund, which is all members other than those that qualify as police officers or firefighters. And we had about 13,500 participating in the police fire fund. You can also see the average ages there for each of those funds. The police fire fund tends to have a lower average age because part of the goal for the police fire fund is to have the youthful and vigorous frontline public safety force to protect the public from physical harm. So that's why you will generally see a lower age there. They also tend to have a little more service credit because they also start younger in the system than our regular members. You also see there that we are as of June 30, we're paying about 72,000 retirees and beneficiaries from the fund. About 63,000 of those from the regular fund, about 9,300 from the police fire fund. We also show the average benefit amounts. So from the regular fund, it's a touch under $3,000 per month, and the police fire fund, it's approximately $5,300 per month. You will also see the total monthly benefits, about $189 million a month are paid to our retirees and beneficiaries from the regular side, and approximately $50 million from the police fire side. I also want to note here that, of course, our members do not participate in Social Security. So often this will be the only benefit that our members have in retirement. Also on here is the Judicial Retirement System. So it is run as an independent system from PERS. It has 112 active members and 82 annuitants. This includes state judges as well as municipal judges and justices of the peace from those local jurisdictions who have elected to allow participation in the fund. These, the local governments are valued separately from the state, so they do have differing contribution rates than the state. Their average benefit is about $6,600 a month, and that, of course, would reflect the different salaries between judges and the PERS members. And you can see the approximate monthly benefits there that we pay from that system. And then finally, we do administer the Legislators' Retirement System. This is a voluntary system, so legislators can opt out of participation. We currently, as of June 30, had 32 active members and 73 retirees and beneficiaries, with an average monthly salary of $487 per month, and we pay about $35,000 a month in total benefits from that fund. On the next page shows the results of the 2020 evaluation for the regular fund, the police fire fund, and the impact on the pre-tax employer pay contribution rates. We've also put the 2018 results in there for comparison because that is the last rate setting year. By statute, the contribution rates are set for each biennium based on the results of the even fiscal year valuation results. So automatically by law, if the rates are more than 0.5% over the current statutory rates, the rates must change as of July 1st, 2021 in this case. So just to go over a little bit on this slide to show you for the regular fund, we finished the year with about 35 billion in assets, with about 10 billion in assets on the police fire side. I want to just make a note here because that was about $46 billion in assets as of June 30, 2020. Our investment return on a market value basis for 2020 was approximately 7.2%, which was one of the highest returns from a public pension system in the country. The median return was approximately 2.4% from the public pension fund database. So we approximately almost 5% higher than that. And year to date, so since June 30, the fund has grown to $54 billion. So from June 30, our assets have grown from 46 billion to 54 billion. I caution a little bit on those numbers because we value on June 30 and the markets have been fairly volatile, as you're probably aware, with the events over the last year. But currently, as of today, we are up about 18% for the current fiscal year. And part of the reason I mention that is because it becomes relevant to our budget that has been proposed by the Retirement Board, because we have run this investment program with one investment staff member who manages the external investment managers. And the Retirement Board has really felt at this point that it's important that we request a second investment position to assist Mr. Edmondson with this fund, not only to assist him, but also to make sure that we have proper succession planning in place. We have had 3 investment officers since the position was created in the statute. And I think one of the big reasons for our success is the stability we've had in our investment program as far as staff goes. And the board thinks it's very important at this point to have a second staff member to work with Steve to take on some of those duties, but more importantly, to learn from Steve, to make sure that when the time comes, we have the appropriate succession and training in place. So that's just, I'm sorry, a little aside into the budget, but we just feel that the investment program right now is working as we would intended. It is doing very well, and we want to make sure that continues on into the future. So continuing on with this slide 3, It does show the employer pay rate. So that's the shared contribution rate where the employee and the employer share the cost of the rate. It is called employer pay, which is a bit of a misnomer, but by law, the employer pays the whole rate to us, but the employee's share is paid either through a direct reduction of salary, which is typically the way the state puts that into place, or in lieu of a promised pay increase. So the employees do share in this rate. And the results of this valuation, the actuarial rate was 0.59 percentage points above the current statutory rate. The statutory threshold is 0.5 percentage points. So that did trigger a rate increase from 29.25. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that did trigger a rate increase because you can see the actuarial contribution came in at 29.84, which is about exactly 0.5% over 2 years ago. So that will trigger the statutory rate. Again, on the police fire side, the rate was also triggered. It was triggered at a little bit higher rate. The police fire totally, from a total perspective, is increasing 1.5%. So that's 0.75 to the employer, 0.75 to the employee. Again, this is by statute. The differences in those two rates is the fact that the police fire fund is smaller, a little more volatile, has different salary experience than the regular fund, and the impact of payroll growth is more significant in the police fire fund. So those are the reasons why you see a little bit difference between the rate increase on the regular fund and the police fire fund. The next page shows the judicial and legislators' retirement systems. These are much smaller funds, as you can see, and by the participation and by the numbers. One thing I'd like to point out here, each of these funds saw a pretty good jump in funded ratio from 2018, and they are both funded at approximately 95%, which is really quite good. So those funds are in very good shape at this point. The next slide shows the contribution costs for the judicial retirement system and the legislators' retirement system. The judicial retirement system, the calculated statutory rate was within the 0.5% of the statutory tolerance. So the judicial retirement system rate will not increase for state judges this year. It remains at 22%. This system also has a lump sum payment that is paid on the unfunded actuarial accrued liability. And the reason for that is when this system was created in 2001, it took in all the unfunded benefit payments from the prior unfunded system. So that payment decreased slightly from 1.337 million last biennium to 1.322 million this biennium. It's kind of the same story for the legislators. The employees themselves or legislators pay 15% of their legislative salary as a contribution, and then the state or LCB pays the remainder of the contribution. That contribution has decreased for the state by about $15,000 per year in this valuation. So then we'll go to the PERS contribution rates for the employer pay side. I already pretty much covered this. But the existing statutory rate for the regular fund employer pay was 29.25. The actuarial rate came in at 29.84. The difference being that 0.59%. The statute requires an adjustment at 0.5%. So the adjustment is to 29.75, which is shared equally between the employer and the employee. So that equates to about 14.875 to each side, and also remembering that we do not pay the Social Security contribution that you would see for private sector employees. Police fire, the statutory rate is 42.5%. As you may recall, this rate is a higher rate than the regular fund because of that early retirement. That is why that generally is why that rate is more expensive than the regular fund, because they can retire earlier. We pay the benefit longer. It requires a higher contribution for that reason. Their actuarial rate came in at 43.93, the difference being that 1.43, which requires an adjustment. And then the adjustment is to the nearest 1/4%, in this case 44%, which is 22% to both the employer and the employee. What we call the after-tax or the employee-employer pay plan also saw the same magnitude of contribution rate increases. This is the plan where instead of the employer paying it all, so there's no tax impact to the employee, under this method, the employee pays their half by after-tax deduction from their salary, so they pay taxes on this amount. And those contributions are refundable, so the rate is slightly more expensive because of that refundability. So you can see that the employee-employer pay rate is 15.5% to each side for the regular members and 22.75 for each side for the police fire members. Now, to project these liabilities of the system that is owed to current members and retirees, we must make assumptions about future events that may affect the timing and amount of the benefits. So we, of course, are estimating what these benefits will be, but we don't know ultimately what they will be because it's based on future events, such as what are salary increases, what is payroll doing, how long people are living, when they retire. And so these liabilities that we've shown, of course, are estimates based on those assumptions. Now, each year in the valuation, we measure the actual experience versus the assumptions, and that's where you will see the gains and losses that then lead to the results of the valuation. Now, to make sure that those assumptions are staying true to our actual experience, we do an experience study every 4 to 6 years. Our next experience study is scheduled for this calendar year, 2021. So for the next time that we talk to you about the valuation, we will have the results of the experience study. There may be some adjustments to certain assumptions. I expect probably an adjustment to the payroll growth assumption because the contribution rate increases that you are seeing in this valuation are primarily driven by the payroll growth being lower than we assume. So we assume a certain amount of payroll growth. Our contribution rate is a percentage of salary, so a percentage of payroll. So if the payroll does not grow to the same extent that we assumed, then the contributions that we receive will be lower than assumed. If contributions are lower than assumed, then that shows up in the valuation as a loss, and then we pick that up in the next biennium from the valuation process. So really what you're seeing here is driven by payroll growth being lower than assumed, and we expect that to be adjusted in the next experience study, which is scheduled for this year. And that is all I really had prepared to say about the valuation. I can answer any questions, or I could turn it over to Ms. Larson for her to talk about our budget.
Thank you very much. I guess I'd like to ask a quick question. I think I want to expand a little bit on one of the last statements that you just made. So all of the vacancies that we're seeing in all these different budgets that are being held open for this first year, which I believe would be considered a base year. So in essence, the existing employees will end up picking up the cost for us not filling those vacancies when the rates are reestablished for the next biennium, not this biennium, though that impact has already happened. But in the future, existing employees will pick up those costs.
Madam Chair, Tina List for the record. So in essence, yes, when the payroll growth is lower than assumed, we have a loss, then the contribution rates may be increased because of it. And if you think about the way our structure is, the employer pays half, the employees pay half. So yes, the employees do pay for half of that contribution rate increase. So if we reduce the payroll growth assumption, which I suspect will definitely be a topic at the retirement board on that, if you reduce the payroll growth assumption, that generally has an increasing effect to the contribution rate itself. And since the employee pays that percentage, it would, of course, increase the rates for the employees. Now, there may be other offsetting issues, but generally, if we reduce the payroll growth assumption, yes, that will raise the contribution rate for the employees, all of the active employees at the time that goes into effect.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's always just good to make that perfectly clear who ends up paying for the vacancies when it comes to this retirement system. So with that, Senator Kekepper had a question.
Hey, Madam Chair, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on your point, because the back end of that equation is also true, right? That if there is less salary being generated, there's less benefit being accrued as well on the other side of that. And I wanted to point out that, I mean, employees are already paying for other people's retirements. It looks like half of people's PERS contributions are funding unfunded liability for people who have already retired. Did I read that slide correctly, Ms. Lewis?
Just for the record, I would say that the unfunded liability, of course, we can add to that or decrease from that with every valuation. So the unfunded liability is associated with all prior service, so not necessarily with retiree service. For instance, personally, I've been in either at the state or at PERS since 1999. So most of the unfunded liability, I think, that's being carried right now was created essentially during my career. So in essence, I am paying for not necessarily liabilities associated with retirees, but also with liabilities associated with the time that I've been employed. So yes, it's some related to retirees. It's also related to past service of current active employees.
Did I read the chart right, that the portion of the contributions attributed to the benefits the individual is earning was about 15.6% or something to that effect? I don't have the slide in front of me right now.
Yes. Tina was for the record. You're correct on that. I believe the normal cost is about that. If I apologize, I'm not finding it very quickly to be 100% accurate on the number.
I can go back and look at the number. It's fine.
But yes, you're correct. And the normal cost itself, I believe, for the regular fund decreased a little bit, and that's seeing the effects of the changes for the 2010 group and the 2015 group the legislature made. So as you recall, when we make changes to the benefit structure, it's for new hires only for legal reasons and probably other policy reasons the legislature has. But so those changes are new hires only. So you're seeing that normal cost actually coming down a little bit as we roll in kind of the new, those new tiers, the 2010 tier, the 2015 tier. But yes, and then the remainder is a payment on the unfunded liabilities. Like I said, I don't have the specific numbers in my head, but I think you basically have the split. And again, that's not necessarily associated with retired members, but that's also associated with current active members as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. With that, not seeing any other high-level questions at this time. So if you'd like to go ahead and proceed, and then we'll save all of our other questions until the end.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Lauren Larson, CFO of the Public Employees Retirement System. As a frame of reference, the system is not a general fund state agency. The system is a public agency with the powers and privileges of a body corporate. Pursuant to the Nevada Constitution, the system is governed by the Retirement Board. Revenue for the system's administrative budget is from the trust fund on a per capita basis for each member and benefit recipient. These revenues are derived from employer and employee contributions received from the 215 public employers and over 118,000 active members in the system. The base budget includes those items necessary to administer the trust fund and fulfill the fiduciary duties owed to all members and beneficiaries of the system. Expenses contained in the administrative budget include amounts for actuarial and audit services, required client communications and notices, offices in Carson City and Las Vegas, and the disaster recovery site. The budget also includes amount for legal expenses and information technology services. You'll see that in Decision Unit E225, the system is requesting 2 new positions, and I'll get into those in just a moment. And then there is also Decision Unit E710, where the system is requesting information technology equipment, and also the funds for the implementation and design of a new pension administration system. The 2 new positions in E225 are the Chief Investment Officer and Chief Administrative Analyst. Both of these positions are within the executive staff structure of PERS and have been requested through the budget BDR process. The Retirement Board has requested the Chief Investment Officer to lead the investment program, provide needed additional staffing and support, and provide a career path for succession planning. Currently, PERS has only 1 investment staff, as Ms. Liss noted, and the investments now total over $50 billion. The Retirement Board has requested the Chief Administrative Analyst to function as a liaison between PERS business and IT. PERS maintains a large IT staff and complex IT systems, and this position will ensure that IT and business work together to meet the system's objectives. And this is going to be very important with the new pension system that we're implementing, but also beyond that, because there are a lot of systems that are managed by IT and used by the business side throughout the system. Decision Unit E710 includes funds for the implementation of the new pension administration system and also standard IT items needed to maintain current systems. The requested funds for the new system will primarily be used for project management, data management, and the new pension system itself, which is Arivos 2.0 from a company called Tegrit Software Ventures. Funds were approved starting in fiscal year 20 to begin the new system implementation. A contract with Tegrit was approved by the Retirement Board in November 2020. Work is scheduled to begin with Tegrit on February 22nd, which is Monday, and we're very excited to kick off this project. And this will continue through fiscal year 25. PERS recently amended the budget, and this was done within the last 2 weeks, so very recent. We amended the budget to align with the Tegrit payment schedule. So these changes actually decreased the fiscal year 22 budget by over $5 million and increased the fiscal year 23 budget by over $1.5 million. So we have seen some changes in the year-over-year budget for the system, but overall, the overall implementation costs are in line with the estimate that was presented to the legislature in 2019. This implementation will be completed in 2 major phases. We have employer reporting and benefit payments. The activities in fiscal year 22 will primarily be focused on the employer reporting phase. And this is scheduled for completion at the beginning of fiscal year 23. And most of fiscal year 23 will be focused on the benefit payment phase, which is a much larger implementation and scheduled for completion in fiscal year 25. Outside of that, outside of PERS, the system also has 2 minor budgets, one for the legislators' retirement system and one for the judicial retirement system. These budgets include amounts for staff time to administer each of these systems, as well as auditing and actuarial expenses. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Ms. Hadagi was going to start off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just have some questions regarding the new pension system. So I know you're currently conducting a data cleanse in about 5 different areas that you expect to have completed before the new system goes live. And I believe you'd like to have that completed before 2024. Are you guys on track to get that data cleansing completed?
Yes, and I'm seeing confirmation from our operations officer. Sorry, this is Lauren Larson, CFO with PERS. Confirmation from our operations officer that yes, we are on track with that.
Okay, great. And then I'm just looking still on decision unit E710. I'm looking at our chart, and it looks like you had originally requested 10.5 in fiscal year 2022 and then 9.2 in fiscal year 2023. And I just want to confirm that there has been a revised amendment, a revised request, and you've actually dropped down to a request of 5.2 in fiscal year 2022 and then 10.8 in fiscal year 2023. Is that correct?
Lauren Larson, CFO with PERS. That's correct. And that has been submitted in NEBS.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. I do have a couple questions on the positions. We've been reviewing a lot of budgets, and most budgets that we've been seeing are freezing positions, holding vacancies. So I think we should have a little bit deeper conversation about the two new positions, and specifically the responsibilities of a chief investment officer. And then if I'm reading this correctly, it almost looks like the existing position and the new position would almost be equal to each other, but one is going to be paid at a higher amount than the other. So I just want to understand, and I'll be very honest with you, I have concerns about these amounts, especially at this moment in time. So if you could give us a little bit deeper understanding on the board's thought in requesting these positions.
This is Tina List, Executive Officer of the Public Employees Retirement System. First of all, the intention of the board was to create the Chief Investment Officer, so that would be above the current investment officer position. It was to be created. We have a 10-step schedule for payment of the executive staff, and so it was created, proposed by the board as one step above the current investment officer position. So the idea would be that the investment officer position would essentially become the staff member reporting to the chief investment officer, and the chief investment officer would really be the equivalent of our investment officer currently. So that's how that reporting would work. So you'd have the investment officer reporting to the chief investment officer, which by statute reports to the executive officer, and ultimately we all report to the retirement board. The thinking of the retirement board, I believe, really comes along about three lines. One is succession planning. One is segregation of duties for audit purposes. One is to continue the duties, but also to not have the risk of just one investment staff member. As we all are aware, over the last year, when you don't have people working in the office as much, a lot of things can happen to your staff member. With a $54 billion program, with a lot of controls in place to move money, to make decisions, it's very difficult with one staff member to do that. Mr. Edmondson has done a fabulous job. We are one of the lowest investment programs from a cost perspective in the country as far as public pension plans go. And I think the board sees a large risk in having just one investment staff member if something were to happen to Mr. Edmondson, or also from the standpoint of segregation of duties. Right now, Lauren Larson, our CFO, is doing some of those, what an assistant investment officer or the investment officer would do, but that's not ideal to have your accounting crossing duties with your investment from an audit perspective. So we really see it as a mitigation of risk and making sure that if something were to happen to Mr. Edmondson, that our program would continue the way it is currently structured now. That there's a risk whenever you have an investment officer coming in from outside the system, that there's a whole culture change in the program. We've seen that with a lot of other public pension systems. We absolutely do not want to see that. If Mr. Edmondson were, I don't foresee him going anywhere. I'm not suggesting he is, but we can't foresee the future, but he will retire someday. And what would be ideal is to make sure, as we've done with all our other investment officers, that they're homegrown within our system so that we don't have to go outside. I also will say there was a survey done by the National Association of State Retirement Administrators for pension systems with $50 billion and above in asset size. The lowest paid investment officer in that group, this was before we hit the 50 billion mark, so we weren't included in that group. The lowest paid investment officer makes more than double what our investment officer makes. We're not suggesting that our investment officer or investment staff should be paid more than what you see in the proposed budget. What we're suggesting is we cannot go out into the public pension world and replace our investment staff with the salaries that we pay, because those salaries are so much higher in the other state systems and in the city and county systems in California. So that's a lot of what they're thinking, that we have to make sure that we have enough as far as the investment staff goes to make sure that we aren't at risk by running a $50 billion program with one staff member, and to make sure that when the time comes for Mr. Edmondson to move on into retirement or elsewhere, that we have a person in place on staff that Mr. Edmondson has trained to continue on in the system that we have currently. This is, I believe, really important to the retirement board as fiduciaries to make sure that we mitigate this risk of having just one investment staff member. And I will be very upfront. We had 2 investment staff members up until the 2015 session. In the 2015 session, we asked for the assistant investment officer position to be renamed in the statute and to be repurposed as the chief financial officer, because at that time we saw the risk as not having a CFO. We were one of the very few pension systems, public pension systems in the country without a CFO. There are a lot of accounting issues we need to deal with. There's a lot of risk in not having a CFO from a segregation of duties as well. And so we had, up until 2015, we did have more than one investment staff. The board felt it more important at that point to have a CFO. Now the board feels it's really important that they need to replace that second investment staff member. And I think that's really where the board was kind of thinking along these lines. We certainly can hear from Mr. Edmondson if you would like as well on his thoughts. But that's kind of, I believe, what the board was thinking as far as the investment position goes. And do you want me to stop with that one or continue on? I'm not sure if you maybe have more questions on the investment side.
No, thank you. I think that's fine. I just think the timing is really bad, to be quite honest with you. We could have discussed this in 17 and 19. I now understand where you're coming from, but when I look at these amounts, it gives me a bit of concern. You're making good arguments, but it's still not really good timing at the moment for something like this. So on the administrative analyst, I believe you're not going to ask, I want to understand is this going to be an unclassified position or a classified position? How are you going to adjust this? And what is the proposed salary of an administrative analyst? And how is that determined?
Madam Chair, Telis for the record again. So our staff, the way we are set up in the statute, we are not classified nor are we unclassified. We are independent of the state personnel system, independent of state executive branch for a number of reasons. The statute's been set up that way. So what we have is we have 2 things really in our statute as far as our staff. Our staff is paid as if in the classified service and can only be terminated as if in the classified service. So that's the bulk of our staff. Those are the only 2 legal requirements as far as state personnel goes, is that the pay is, we can associate it into the classified service and they can only be terminated as if in. Then we have what I call the statutory positions, or what we would call our executive staff. Those are the positions that are listed in the statute. Those are positions, my position is hired by the board. Every other position in the statute is my selection with a confirmation by the board. And those are positions that are at will. So unlike the rest of our staff, they are at will. They are not subject to termination only as if in the classified service. And so we only have those 2 really mechanisms to add to our staff. And the reasoning behind putting this into the statute was so that it was an upper management position that served at will. And the salary level is, Lauren, where's the salary level for this? We currently have an administrative analyst in the statute. And so what this was going to do is create succession planning and a track into the administrative side up to the operations officer to help with the board with succession planning on the administrative side versus the investment side. So this position would be paid, I believe, at 2 steps above the current administrative analyst, which is one of the lower paid positions within our executive staff structure. It will be paid equal to our current IT manager. So that's kind of, as a frame of reference, is paid the same amount as you would see for our IT manager, who is also in that statute. So the reasoning there, again, is the succession planning and the segregation of duties, but also to absolutely ensure the success of our new pension processing system. We do have, as Lauren said, some very complex IT systems. We also have some very complex business processes, and we have sometimes the translation between the business side and the IT side can be very difficult. And so that position was really designed to make sure that the communication is always working between the two, and that you can have one position that understands both the IT processes and the business processes very, very well, and how they combine and work together. I will say that the investment position is what is the board's highest priority here between the two positions. But the board also felt this one was important as well, but they really have the investment position as the higher priority from the risk and succession planning purposes.
Thank you. Senator Dennis, did you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just want to go back to the new system. As I looked over the information that we got, you included your hardware, software upgrades that aren't related to the system upgrade in your request. I just want to make sure that was the case, and because my question there is there any hardware needs that are not associated with just regular upgrades that's needed for the new system?
Lauren Larson, CFO with the Public Employees Retirement System. There are certain hardware needs for the new system, but those actually align with the same hardware that we needed to purchase anyway. So the Tegrit did provide us with a list of hardware and software that we would need to have in order to complete this project. And once we looked over that list, it was in line with current hardware and software that we already had or needed. Anyway.
So is that why you included your upgrades in the 710?
We included Lauren Larson, CFO with PERS. We included the upgrades in E710. We've always used E710 for essentially all of our information technology items. So I think those were just combined into one enhancement area. That's just how we've always submitted our budget, with that E710 as the enhancement item related to information technology.
Okay, but just from what you just said, though, the most of the hardware and things that you are upgrading are related to Tegrit. Even they were already at their end of useful life, and you were going to replace them anyways. But you needed those, so there's so all of it basically needed to be done, except for you probably have some software in here or hardware that just needed to be replaced because it was at the end of its useful life, right?
Lauren Larson, CFO with PERS. That's correct. Yeah, certain servers and things needed to be replaced. But a lot of this the desktops, laptops, and tablets and things, those just needed to be replaced. And then there were certain items that were at their end of life that we would need to replace anyway, but Tegrit is requiring those or recommends those items.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome. Committee members, other questions? I believe there'll be some more follow-up on the positions. I think that we're going to want to get some more information on workload, things along that line, in order for us to make a decision on this one. But committee members, are there any other questions on the PERS budget? Not seeing anyone wishing to be recognized. I believe that wraps this budget up. Thank you very much. So with that, committee members, our final item on our agenda for today will be public comment. So if we could go ahead, we'll take a moment. It's 9:54. We'll take a couple moments, and then we'll go to the public comment line.
Chair, this is Michael from Broadcast. We do currently have one caller. Would you like me to queue them up?
Yes, please, go ahead.
In order to make public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 837, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. This is Kent Irvin, ERVIN, with the Nevada Faculty Alliance, representing faculty at NC colleges and universities. We work to empower faculty to fulfill our mission to help students succeed. About 15% of NC faculty and all of our classified staff colleagues are members of PERS. We are very grateful that PERS is well managed with a lean staff and that PERS is prudently paying off unfunded liabilities over a set 20-year time period. Nevertheless, the increase in retirement contributions next fiscal year represents a 0.25% reduction in take-home pay. With no cost of living adjustment in GovRec, effective pay will be further reduced by inflation, which was 1.7% in 2020 per the Urban West Consumer Price Index, along with the current 4.6% furlough since January and the increase in PEB employee health care premiums last year by up to 40%. Of course, we appreciate that GovRec does not extend the furloughs and that layoffs have been relatively limited during this pandemic, but I wanted to give you this broader overview. Thank you very much.
Any other callers?
The public comment line is open and working. However, we have no other callers at this time.
All right. Well, thank you, committee, very much for your work this week. It's another week down, so good job to everyone, and especially to staff and broadcast services that have made this all work for us. Again, Monday morning, Senator Brooks will be chairing, and we will be starting the committee at 9 a.m. That allows our staff and other folks to get some things done in the morning before we start. So thank you all, and everyone, safe travels home if you're not home already, and have a good weekend. See you on Monday. We're adjourned.